In about 3 days' time, I'll be finally moving out of this city of Toronto to Montreal, and I could not be happier. I am just ecstatic to finally be getting out of here. I mean, yeah, I'm happy to go to Montreal, but the main reason I'm so excited is because I'm finally leaving this horrible city and what's become of it. Because at one point, this city was amazing. It was so good to live here. And now it's horrible and unlivable. Let me start by stating the obvious, how crazy expensive rent is right now in Toronto in 2023. It's absolutely ridiculously unaffordable on every level. Right now, about $2,600, $2,600 is what you gotta pay if you want to live in a one-bedroom apartment here. For a simple one bedroom that doesn't even include utilities, hydro, electric, no parking spot, no nothing. And just to give you an idea of how expensive it's gotten, in 2017, a few friends of mine, I remember, were renting a place about 45 minutes north of downtown Toronto. A 3-bedroom place, they were renting it for $1,600. Now, in 2023, that same place, that 3-bedroom, is $2,849. And that's just one example of what it's like to be here. It's horrible, man. It's getting to a point now, it's so ridiculously unaffordable, and you can't do anything at this point because more than 60 to 70% of your paycheck per month goes towards rent for a lot of people. And it's the single biggest problem this city has. That's why people in record numbers, people in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, are still living at home with their parents. And it's crazy because the places that are usually available for rent are in horrible condition. Not in any condition to live. I'm talking there is mold along the walls, leaking toilets, leaking sinks, doorknobs that don't lock properly, bugs of all kinds. And guess what? The landlords don't gotta fix anything. Why? Because if you don't wanna rent a place, there's 30 other people in line to rent that exact place. And that's the other issue with why rent is so expensive. There's a lack of good housing here and a lack of the number of houses. And I don't see it changing anytime soon. It's just the way it is. It's so unfortunate. The next part of why I'm leaving this place is public transit. Oh my God. Public transit is criminally bad here. Like absolutely criminally bad. For a city that's as big as Toronto with over 9 million people living here right now, we need absolutely much better public transit here. For example, Toronto's subway system is almost the exact same as it was in 2002. There have been a few additions, but for the most part, it looks almost the exact same back when there was 4 million people living here. Now that number is more than doubled, but the subway station hasn't seen anything major. And unless you live in the heart of downtown Toronto or near a subway station, this is very much a car city. You're not gonna be able to get to most places without a car. And the politicians who run this city, they're really trying hard to emulate New York. That's their biggest role model, is trying to be like New York City. But it's not New York City. And that brings me to my next point. The traffic in this city is absolutely ridiculous. You might be seeing the cars here next to me right now driving. There's a bit of traffic here on the road, but for the most part, it is absolutely crazy how busy the roads have gotten since before COVID. And when COVID was over, all of a sudden everyone came back into the streets. It was very clear there is not enough roads. And don't even get me started on highways, because Toronto has only one highway that goes east to west, and it's the 401. And little known facts, the 401 is the busiest highway in North America. Yeah, busier than any highway in California, any highway in New York, by far the busiest one. And you know why? It's because we only have one of those highways here. In California, they got multiple of them. New York, they got multiple highways. We got only one that goes east to west. And if you look at a photo of the highway on Google Maps, it's always completely red and congested. And every Torontonian who drives does their absolute best to never get on that highway, yet it's always still crazy busy. It's just the reality of it. Don't even get me started on the condition of the roads. I'm talking potholes everywhere, just never-ending divots. It's just not good infrastructure to begin with. I also don't know why they seem to love to give licenses to whoever applies for them here. A lot of people don't know how to drive. Yeah. If you're driving in the heart of downtown, it is absolutely horrendously bad because of how congested traffic can get. And that brings me to my next point, is the never-ending construction that's going on in every corner of this city. It never ends. There's an ongoing joke between Torontonians about a street called Eglinton that's in Midtown Toronto. And since I moved here in 2011, it's had construction on it 24/7, 365, nonstop. All the time, year-round, there is construction going on. And here's the funny part, nothing actually gets built. So you kind of wonder, what are you guys building here and nothing is actually getting erected? It's just kind of stupid, but hey, that's the way it is here. And that's the reality for a lot of Torontonians. And you'll often drive by or walk by the construction sites. And during the day, you'll see nobody working there. You know why? It's because the companies that are working there, they're taking their time to get as much money from the government as possible. And the government, because they're so horribly mismanaged here, they're not doing anything to change it, anything to fix it. So you have a lot of these construction sites popping up, you know, they're saying they're gonna build new buildings, build new roads, build new whatever, but nothing is getting done. And to make matters worse, they're closing off parts of the road for years sometimes, years. And it's absolutely atrocious that it's happening and we can't do anything to fix it. So the one thing I can do is get the hell out of the city. Oh, and it brings me to my next point, which might be my favorite point of all so far. It's the politics and the politicians of the city. Even based on politician standards, the lies they tell us are absolutely bottom tier. The amount of lying they say to get elected, for example, especially regarding transit, is mind-blowing. They have always been promising, oh, we're gonna get better transit for the city, we're gonna lower housing prices. Every politician who comes in says the same things, and none of it has been changing. It's been getting worse, pretty much by the day. And something interesting about the mayors of Toronto, so the two past mayors, the one that left office maybe about a month ago, he pulled a Bill Clinton. Yeah, he cheated on his wife of 40 years with one of his staffers. And yeah, so he decided to just leave his job because he did that. The guy before him who was here, he had a huge scandal because he kept buying and he kept smoking it. And we have something with mayors here in this city for some reason. They just all seem to be breaking the law. So I'm curious to see who the next one's gonna be. They're inheriting an absolutely dying city, and I'm just curious to see what they're gonna do with it. But I'm predicting it's not gonna be anything good. Next point is, there's a lack of purpose here, 100%. There is no purpose that most people walk around, they go to work, they go home, they sleep, next day, they go to work, they go home, they sleep. And because it's so expensive to live here, there is a lot of people who don't have any hobbies or any real hobbies outside of their work. So they become fully fledged workaholics because that's all they can do, right? That doesn't even begin to include the commute times that people have to do to actually get to work. There's a lot of people that very regularly commute more than 2 hours just to get to work and then 2 hours just to get back home. And you can imagine what kind of impact that would have on the rest of your day. You're probably not gonna get anything else done. That's not really any fault of your own, it's just the reality of things. And it's a very common thing for Toronto. The next thing is, this is a very soulless city and there's a very huge lack of empathy for anybody here. It's very fast-paced. It's kind of similar to New York in that style. It's that it's a very fast-paced city. People just don't care about you. For the most part, you're on your own. For example, if I was to literally fall over here, curl up into a ball in pain, people would walk right past me. They wouldn't care. And you know, whoop. Caught one in action. As I was saying, the reason I know that would happen is because you see it happen downtown on a daily basis. People are literally curled up into a ball on the side of the street, so many of them, and they get nothing. There is no help for them whatsoever. And it's just the way it is. There is no culture here in the city to bring people together either. And that also kind of ties in with the city being so multicultural. It's a great thing, don't get me wrong. But for the most part, you have all the diasporas keeping to themselves and doing their own thing. Every holiday gets celebrated here, but there's very little overlap, if you will. Like, they don't really celebrate the holidays together. And every community usually keeps to themselves. Like, the Asians will keep to themselves. When it's Russian Easter and Russian Orthodox, they will keep to themselves in their own community. It's not like everyone comes together and celebrates it. Everyone keeps themselves in their own little corners. That's the reality and the culture of Toronto. The next part is the weather. Yo, the weather here is absolute dog shit, absolute garbage on every level. I mean, right now it's the end of April, and I'm walking around with a jacket and a hat on because it's so cold. It's probably like 4 or 5 degrees here out right now. You know, the weather, it'll be sunny one day, next day it'll be freezing rain, next day it'll be snowing, next day it'll be cloudy. It's just so unpredictable. That's not anything to do with the government, obviously, but it's just not good weather here for the most part. I mean, it's Canada, so for about 6 to 8 months out of the year, it's very cold anyway. And for the little amount of summertime you do get, you got to cherish every minute of it. Now, this next point here might be a bit controversial, but I stand behind it, and that is the lack of free speech and the woke mentality that this city has just for some reason adopted like it's the main thing it's known for. And yes, we do have free speech laws in Canada, which are great, don't get me wrong, those are great. But in Toronto, if you're not really supporting everybody else, you're not going along with the woke mentality, you're kind of pushed to the side. This is actually one of the worst areas of the city. It's okay though. As I was saying, there is a big woke mentality here, and Canadians for the most part are very tolerant of everything. That's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. But here, it's very much a us versus them mentality. And I don't like that. I don't like that it's like that. It should be, you can do whatever you want, you can say whatever you want to say, and you shouldn't be ousted for it. But people forget oftentimes that, hey, freedom of speech means you gotta tolerate a lot of stuff. Next thing is, man, lately, public safety has been becoming such a huge issue in this city. And you hear news all the time in the subway, people get attacked, random, unprovoked attacks. A few months ago, a woman was set on fire on the subway station just for waiting. A few days ago, some lady jumped in front of the tracks because she just wanted to end her own life. And a few days ago again, a 16-year-old kid was stabbed to death. He was sitting on a bench by himself doing nothing, minding his own business. But these attacks are becoming more and more commonplace in this city. And it's very worrying to see this happening because this is one of the safest big cities in the world. For the most part, safety here was never an issue before, but now it is. Look at this giant liquor store. You know, so like during the pandemic, this place was still open, no problem, because the government kept wanting to make money from it. The next thing, nightlife in this city. For some reason, I don't know why, internationally, Toronto nightlife is renowned. It's very mediocre at best. It's very mediocre. There isn't anything really special about nightlife in Toronto. Like when I used to go out clubbing a lot back a few years ago, me and my friends would often go to neighboring cities like St. Catharines or London or Montreal because the nightlife there is so much better than it is in Toronto. And for some reason, people think it's amazing when it's really not. It's very, very mediocre at best. Very, very expensive, first off. Super expensive, and not even that good. And of course, you gotta mention how bad the homelessness problem in this city is now. You know, Toronto shelters. First of all, there is very, very few Toronto shelters. There's only enough room for 9,000 people inside of them. And there's more than 20,000 people here who are homeless. And that number is growing every single day. And it's really tough to see because all these people gotta go somewhere. They gotta sleep somewhere, they gotta stay somewhere. And they're not really building any new shelters for them. So you see a lot more of them. If you walk in downtown Toronto at night, you're gonna see a lot of homeless people just on the floor, in corners. Yesterday, I was walking downtown Toronto. I saw a guy literally sleeping in the middle of the street. I mean, he had a blanket, a sleeping bag. He was sleeping in the middle of the sidewalk, like right in the middle. And people were just like walking right past him. The guy was fast asleep. You're seeing more and more of that every single day now. And it's very sad because they seem to not really be getting cared about whatsoever. But again, that's the reality of this place. The second to last thing is the lack of connection between the neighboring cities. And what I mean is, for example, you have downtown Toronto. Right next to it, you have Mississauga to the west. You have Brampton to the northwest. You have Richmond Hill to the north, Scarborough to the east, Ajax even a little more east to that. These cities only have one bus route that connects them. And unless you got a car, again, it's very hard to get back and forth from these cities. And the buses, first off, they can take anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half to 2 hours to get you there. If you don't have a car, especially in those places, you need a car. Like in Ajax or Mississauga, you have to have a car. If you're taking public transit, you're gonna be adding at least 2 hours to your commute time. And that's just kind of unacceptable in my eyes. But hey, some people seem to like it. For me, I pass. And the last thing I want to say, it's the sad reality. This is as good as it's going to be. It's not going to get any better, unfortunately. This is as good as it gets for now. And it's going to only get worse from here because, I mean, prices for rent aren't going to magically go down tomorrow. You know, you're not going to have better roads coming up out of nowhere. It's not going to fix itself and it's not going to get any better. That's why I think, in my opinion, the best thing I can do is get the hell out of this place. And I'm doing that. I'm gonna do that. And hopefully say goodbye to all this chaos. That's it. I'll see you next time.